Elden Ring Nightreign, the spin-off to Elden Ring and its DLC, one of the greatest games in my opinion of all time, is releasing tonight at midnight on consoles, as well as 6 p.m. if you're playing this game on PC, and that is Eastern time, so it could be earlier or later for you. One very important thing to mention here though is the team that built this game is not the same team that worked on Elden Ring, for example. There might be a little bit of crossover, but this game is not being directed by Miyazaki himself. It's being directed by a new director that is working on spin-off games like Nightreign and like Duskbloods for Switch 2 that's going to be releasing in 2026, and his name is, I believe, and I'm going to blow up and butcher it, Junya Ijisaki. Another important thing to mention here is this game is only $40. It's going to be smaller in scale and set to be smaller in scale than Elden Ring, the base game, which is $60, as well as its DLC, which is $40, making it a $100 experience. This is not a big, long, single-player RPG that you've come to know and love from FromSoftware. This is a game that is purely made for 3-person co-op, albeit having a solo option. And with that being said, we have already gotten some reviews coming in about the game, mostly positive, but a little bit mixed as well. But before getting into the reviews, what is this game set to be like? What is the gameplay loop with it being FromSoft's pretty much first multiplayer focused game? Well, first you're going to start off in a hub, which is going to be an alternate version of the Roundtable hold, which in my opinion looks awesome. From there, you can do normal matchmaking. I can't believe FromSoftware put normal matchmaking into a video game, but yes, you can do normal matchmaking, or you can use a password to match with a friend. However, if you match with one friend, you will automatically be placed with a third person. This game cannot be played duo, which is an extremely big bummer, at least in my opinion. However, this is something, albeit overlooked, that they are going to potentially look at adding in the future. From there, you're going to pick between one of 8 characters, which I'll get to in a little bit, but each of these 8 characters have very distinct playstyles and abilities and ways to approach the game in general. So if you're playing with friends, make sure you pick a team comp that could potentially work. From there, you're going to be placed on a spectral hawk, where the game is basically going to decide for you where you drop. This is not going to be Fortnite or Warzone where you fly in and pick your starting location. And from there, your goal is to loot up and get as strong as possible for when the circle finally closes. And this is going to be constantly closing in. So one of the most important things is to always stay moving. It's a very fast-paced experience, and that's why they've added things in this game like the Spectral Hawk that you can fly throughout the map. They've added things like no fall damage and super sprints to go like twice as fast as the normal Elden Ring sprint. There's going to be things like churches where these can upgrade your flasks. Different merchants throughout the game where you can buy very essential items from souls that you get throughout the game. There's obviously going to be graces, which you can level up at. And with those graces and leveling up, all you do is level up your character by a level. It's not picking stats like the base Elden Ring is, again, in the same vein of being very fast-paced. There's going to be mines where you can even go to beat the boss at the end and you can level up your item from blue to purple, for example. And with these items, there are hundreds of different items in the game, as you would come to expect from a game that is a spin-off of Elden Ring with hundreds of items with different abilities attached to them, and that's going to be the same thing here. The only difference here is they're going to be different rarities, so you could even find legendary like yellow and orange items, for example, that are going to be even powerful than the previous ones. But as you're looting, going to these different locations, getting better upgrades to your character, to your weapons, to your flasks, to your level, etc., like I mentioned, this circle is going to be closing in, and by the time it fully closes in, you need to be in the middle of there because you are going to have to fight a night boss. And before you fight the night boss, you're going to have to fight multiple waves of enemies. And these night bosses are going to be a lot of the similar ones that you have seen in games like Elden Ring, and even I believe 8 different bosses from Dark Souls, all of these redesigned to make sure they have mechanics that are more suitable for a 3-person co-op experience. Now, after you beat the night boss, you're pretty much going to restart what you did on night 1, and you're going to start night 2 with the same exact goal as getting to the center, getting as strong as possible, and fighting the second night boss. But there are going to be a couple changes in the second night versus the first one. While I don't want to spoil all of the different things that can happen in night 2, one thing, for example, is you can be invaded by Margit, which will attack your team at any point in time, no matter where you are in the game and no matter what you're doing. There can also be floods of enemies that come out of a portal out of nowhere that attack you in the middle of your playthrough as well. There are many other things that can happen. The last one that I'll share is, for example, there could be a vortex that comes into the air, and this vortex, for example, can empower all of the enemies there and actually have 2 different NPCs that can invade you while you're there as well. But other than this, it's going to remain the same. You get to the end of the night, you beat the boss, and then you fight one of the 8 Night Lords within the game. When you start your run, these are the 8 Night Lords that you pick to actually fight by the end of your run, and these 8 Night Lords, again, are going to be remixes of previous bosses from Dark Souls games, as well as Elden Ring, and even some brand new bosses. All of them completely redesigned for a 3-person co-op experience. And from what we've heard about these Night Lords and what we've seen from people who have played the game previously, all of these fights seem to be absolutely amazing, and I cannot wait to go and take out each one of these. And once you beat 4, it's going to unlock an 8th and final boss. However, you can do any 4 of the 7, or you can do all 7 before you do fight this 8th and hardest Night Lord. Now, when you do go back to the Roundtable hold, there's a couple things that you're going to be able to do before you go on to your next run. Number 1, you can unlock permanent bonuses for your character and how their abilities work. Each character is going to have, I believe, about 4 or 5 of these where you can actually equip 3 of them. I wish there was more options here, but this is definitely a great way to go into your next run, at least more powerful, and focus on a specific build that you want. On top of this, you'll be able to equip 3 different relics that you'll be getting throughout your runs, and these relics are going to have some pretty basic modifiers, but at least you'll be able to still focus in on a specific build with a specific class that you like playing or choosing. And then on top of this, you can also unlock different skins for your character, and each character has multitude of skins, a lot of Dark Souls references, which I'm sure people will like, that I think is awesome. Now, with these 8 classes, which they call Nightfarers in this game, how do they differ from each other? Starting off with the first class, you have the Wilder, which is set to be an all-rounder class, focusing on speed and attack power. They're going to have a decent amount of health, decent amount of endurance, and a decent amount of mana. However, what really separates them from others is their weapons and their skills. They're going to start with a greatsword and a small shield. They're going to have a passive called Sixth Sense. This Sixth Sense is basically just going to revive you if you die one time, and then they're going to have a skill called Claw Shot, which is more of like a grapple hook, and then they're also going to have an ultimate where you pretty much just blow up all of the enemies in front of you with giant fire. The next Nightfarer here is going to be called the Guardian. This is going to be more of a tank class with heavy attacks and a lot of damage resistance and a lot of health. And their passive skill is basically a more powerful block. Their actual skill is called Whirlwind, which they swing their weapon into a circle and it creates a gust of wind all around them, and that will also hit the enemies and knock them up. And then the last ability, which is their ultimate, will be called Wings of Salvation. And this is going to be basically an ability where you jump into the air and then slam onto the ground, and their weapons are going to be the halberd and the great shield. Next, we have the more stealthy class that is also going to be using 2 daggers called the Duchess. Now, they're going to have a lot lower health than the previous classes, but in my opinion, they seem pretty damn insane off the jump. Their first ability is going to be their passive called Magnificent Poise, which is basically going to be just a better dodge with more optimal and more consistent dodging. Their next ability is going to be called Restage, and this ability is really good if you use it in the right way, because it is going to apply all of the damage the boss took in the last couple seconds and apply it again to the boss. So if you're paying attention and someone does a couple ultimates and does a huge hit on the boss, you can double this damage and reapply that exact same damage to the boss with their skill. Now, their last ability is going to be called Finale, and this is going to be basically a group stealth ability where it's going to allow you to res up teammates or reset your group and heal, etc. Now, moving on to the next Nightfare, we have the Recluse, which is going to be the first sorcerer class, and they're going to have, because of this, more mana and less health than a lot of the other Nightfarers. And on top of this, they're going to be starting with a staff, a glintstone pebble, and a glintstone arc. Now, their first passive ability is really just going to basically pull out these different elements from enemies, so that way you can use your second and active ability called Magic Cocktail. And Magic Cocktail is going to do a ton of different things, but basically by pulling out different elements from your enemies and using them on your first 3 attacks, your 4th attack is always going to change. This 4th attack could buff you, this could do a ton of damage to your enemies, etc. Their last ability, which is their ultimate ability, is called Ultimate Art, which puts marks on targets and is really good for sustain, because if you or your teammates attack this marked target, they're going to be regenerating HP and FP. Moving on to the 5th Nightfarer, we have the Iron Eye, which is going to be your basic archer, and they're going to start with a basic archer's loadout as well, starting out with a bow. And their first ability is their passive called Eagle Eye, allowing you and your allies to get more loot and see more loot from your enemies. Now the next is going to be called Marking, allowing you to mark targets, and if anybody, including your allies, attack that target, they're going to be able to do more damage to them. With your last ability is your ultimate called Single Shot, and this ability is going to be a giant frontal AoE archer shot that is going to be able to pierce terrain and do a ton of damage. Moving on, we now have the Raider, a class that specializes in big, enormous weapons and is going to start off with a two-handed great axe. Now, they've been seen as one of the best classes in the game, or at least from some of the footage that I've watched, because of some of their abilities. Their first ability is called Fighter's Resolve, which isn't allowing them to be knocked down ever, which is extremely good. Their next is going to be called Retaliate, which is going to be a giant punch that can stagger even some of the biggest enemies in the game. And last, their ultimate ability is called Totem Stella, where they can pretty much terraform the ground, shifting a gigantic totem into the air and allowing you and your teammates to kind of stay away. This is also going to do a ton of damage and allow kind of like an archer's perch if you have one of those classes in your party to just shoot down from. Now, the second to last Nightfarer here is called the Executor, which is characterized as a crucible warrior that wields a cursed katana. Now, this is going to be, at least in my opinion, a Sekiro-like class, which I'll get to when I start talking about their abilities, but their passive is Tenacity, which is going to give them a boost to recovering from status ailments, as well as a boost to attack and stamina recovery speeds. Their next is going to be called Cursed Blade, where you draw a cursed sword and you deflect enemy attacks. Multiple deflections of this enables powerful attacks with what they call the Living Sword, but you cannot run while at ready with the Enchanted Blade, so this is going to be something you could get hit if you're not using it correctly. The last one here is called Aspects of the Crucible Beast, and this is their ultimate ability, where you literally transform into a giant primordial beast that uses completely different attack patterns than normal. Last but not least, we have the Revenant class, which is going to be your basic summoner Nightfarer, and they're going to start off using spirit summons, as you would expect in a summoner class. Their passive ability is called Necromancy, which every time you defeat an enemy, you have a chance to revive them as an ally, which is insane. You then have your skill, which is going to be called Summon Spirit, where you can summon 3 different souls to help you in combat, and the last one is going to be called Immortal March, and this is going to be your ultimate ability. This is going to be able to revive any near-death teammates while also giving all of the summons immortality. Definitely let me know down below in the comments what class or what Nightfarer you guys are going to start off using. But before I get to the reviews and then to the end of this video, I do quickly want to talk about one more thing that can happen to the maps that is going to be relatively rare, or at least after you complete it for the first time. And these are going to be called Shifting Earth Locations, which is going to be the biggest randomization you're going to have on any concurrent playthroughs. There's 4 different Shifting Earth Locations, and going to these is going to present you a lot harder bosses and enemies that are going to be specific to these locations. For example, you might have a Nokron City location, you might even have a lava location, you might even have something like a Scarlet Rot location. And these are going to be of the utmost importance to do if they are on your map when you spawn in, and it's going to take all 3 of the players to make sure you complete these in the amount of time before the night ends. These are going to stay for both the first and the second night, so a lot of players recommend tackling these on the second night. And that's going to lead me into the reviews, and I want to start off with the negatives. Anything that might put you guys off from playing the game. And the first negative is about those Shifting Earth locations. You go and you fight them for the first time, but apparently these are extremely rare. You can play for countless hours and never find these in your game after completing one for the first time. And this goes with a lot of the negatives I've been seeing out there with the randomization in general. Even the invasions that can happen in Night 2 are extremely rare, and they only happen once every few runs. On top of this, the randomization of the map in general isn't very good. The locations like the churches, for example, or some of the ruins will change from map to map, but overall, the map's going to be very similar every time you go in, and you're going to be targeting the same optimal locations once you find out what those are pretty much every single time you go into the game. And every time you visit one of these locations, albeit randomized where it is on the map, there's only 1 or 2 different types of bosses or enemies that you're going to be fighting at these locations. Some of them never have randomization and are the same every time you go to them. And although I haven't played the game myself, I can definitely see this getting relatively stale over time, especially after you beat all of the 8 Night Lords and you're just pretty much playing the game for new fun things to happen regardless. I also quickly want to talk about your character in the builds. I mentioned you can get some permanent upgrades to each of your classes, and each class has about 3 or 4 of these, maybe 5 that you can use, but you can use 3 at the same time. So almost every class that's going into the game is going to find the best optimal 3 bonuses to add to your character and only use those. There's not going to be a ton of different build variety, especially because those relics I mentioned, which you can also use a few of that are similar to those Bloodborne upgrades that you can add to your weapons, they don't really do anything other than provide you some really bad bonuses. There's only a couple that are very unique that are actually going to be used in the game from what I hear in the reviews. Even in the game, when you beat bosses and get different weapons and you get different upgrades that are similar to roguelike upgrades, these aren't really anything other than base stat bonuses. There are a few other ones that aren't the base stat bonuses. However, these ones just apparently aren't as good as the base increasing of damage or health, etc., or whatever the case may be. So the biggest 2 negatives that I've seen so far are just the randomness not being very actually random at all, and then on top of that, the build variety offering a lot of options, but only a few options that you're actually ever going to use, because those are going to be the best ones. But in regards to the positives, I've seen a lot more here. Most of what people have played say the combat in the classes are absolutely amazing, and that the Nightfarers are extremely different from each other, but work very well together, and that the core of the Elden Ring feeling is still there. The pace is just skyrocketed. It's way faster paced than the base game. From what I hear about when you first play the game, when you're first going and fighting the first 8 Night Lords, the experience is amazing. It's not as repetitive because a lot of things are still new to you at that point. And for a new player that didn't play Elden Ring, they might absolutely love this game because of the fast pace and because of the co-op and these giant bosses that are completely redesigned for co-op experiences. And from what we've heard about the 8 field bosses, what we've seen, the end of night bosses, as well as just the field bosses in the world, them being redesigned for a 3-person co-op experience is not going to make them just a walk in the park like it was if you grouped up with a bunch of different teammates in Elden Ring, the base game, for example. So overall, it looks like at the start, this is going to be a really fun game. The first 20 to 30 hours, going through all of the different 8 Night Lords with your friends or even with random people, I think it's going to be an absolute blast. You're going to be experiencing a lot of this stuff for the first time, upgrading your characters, getting different skins, fighting these giant bosses with other people for the first time in a fully co-op focused Elden Ring FromSoftware game. And I'm very excited for that. But after the first 20 to 30 hours and after the game is fully completed, I think a lot of people will drop off pretty fast, unless there are obviously new maps and updates and bosses that they add into the game later on, which I'm assuming will probably happen. Thank you guys for watching the video. Let me know down below in the comments if you're going to be playing Nightreign. Are you excited for Nightreign or not, and why? And if you are, what Nightfare are you going to be dropping in with for the first time? Again, thank you guys for watching the video. If you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe if you liked what you see here. For my returning viewers, thank you guys so much for the support as always. Please like this video if you liked the video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm dropping a best games of June tomorrow, so hopefully you guys are excited for that video. Thank you guys. See ya. Peace.